Hi, Dragoș. Let's start
Fiona.
with you introducing yourself and your role at the university.
Sure. My name is Dragoș Ciobanu. I currently work for the University of Vienna. I'm a professor of computation technology and machine translation. And before coming to Vienna in 2020, so that's 3 years ago almost, I used to work for the University of Leeds in the UK, where I was looking after the masters in applied translation studies and playing with lots of technology. And I think that's how we got to know each other.
Yes, yeah, indeed. We did connect first in that role, with you in that role. So what course, before we get into the Trados side, what courses do you teach currently?
Most of my courses are around machine translation because there's a new and interesting drive from our University of Vienna Center for Translation Studies to expose students to more technology and also specifically to more machine translation early on in their training, which is quite new and quite fun. So I teach undergraduate practical courses in machine translation. I also have a lecture, which is meant to be more theoretical, but we still have lots of case studies and so on. I also co-teach master's courses in machine translation, but also translation technologies. And I also look after MA students in master's curriculum because in Austria, all MA students need to write a thesis. In the UK, it's a bit more flexible and it's a bit more market oriented, but different
Oh, okay,
systems.
that's interesting. Yeah,
So that's kind of.
Yeah, so are those MAs in more general translation?
We have several MA programs and we have translators, interpreters, also literary translators. And so the students who come to write, not with me, but kind of be advised in their writing process by me, they really are a variety of students. But the common trend is that whether they are interpreters or technical translators by training, they have a keen interest in technology. So that's kind of where we meet. We all play with some interpreting technology or technology or translation technology, and
Okay.
we look for new things.
Okay, cool. I got the picture. So very technically oriented in any case. So leading on to talk about Trados really. So you've actually worked with Trados for quite a long time. Perhaps you could just give us a bit of an insight on that.
I still remember the workbench. So I joined the University of Leeds in 2003, and Tony Hartley and Bob Clark and Joe Drugan, they were already teaching translation technologies, and we had the workbench, and we were starting at that time to expose students, master students, to translation technologies, but also Tony was leading a project called Ecolore, which was a collaborative EU-funded project developing training materials for translators. So it was a fun time where professional translators were also getting to grips with the new technologies and the students, and we were having lots of fun. And then we stayed with Trados and moved to Studio. When Studio appeared, we also added Pasolo when Pasolo was around, and then it became part of RWS, and yeah, we know the story. But the main point is that we have been using pretty much all the tools, so multi-term, even multi-term extract at some point, Studio and Pasolo in our teaching in Leeds, and it's pretty much the same story in Vienna as well. We still have localization courses with Pasolo and translation technology courses with Studio, as well as other CAT tools, terminology courses with Multiterm. So yeah, we cover all bases.
Yeah, that is definitely covering all bases. So how does it work with your courses currently? It says, so perhaps you could just take us through that now.
Yeah, at undergraduate level, We don't have at the moment too many technology courses. So even though my hands-on course is called machine translation, um, I actually think it's a good idea, and together with the rest of the high trans group, which I lead and we teach together because we like to do things together. We think it's a good idea to expose students not just to the machine translation part, but actually get them to see more of a holistic picture of what a project looks like from beginning to end and what kind of tools are useful. So we start with a CAD tool, and sometimes that's Trados Studio. And then we integrate machine translation into that particular project. So for Trados, we have been using OpusCat MT and plugging that in so that the students can examine and evaluate and post-edit within a realistic CAD tool environment. Because otherwise we think we're not really doing them much of a service by just isolating machine translation and just throwing some files at them while they haven't seen a CAD tool before.
Right.
So
yeah. So post-editing must be a big part of that learning. Yeah.
Yep, but also evaluating, and also thanks to the functionality that OpusCat allows, we can also show students how to fine-tune and improve a standard model, a generic model. And lately we've been, thanks to one of our team members, Dr. Miguel Rios, we've been focusing on medical translations, and our students are a little bit daunted at first because it's quite specialized and a bit of a challenge. But at the same time, I think it's good to expose students to challenges, and as long as they realize it's a safe environment to experiment and then get feedback from each other, uh, nobody minds the odd error or the odd mistranslation, which then gets fixed up in discussions.
Yeah, that's part of the learning process, isn't it? After all, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So, and how do your students get on with using the software?
I think the live team initiatives and moving to the cloud are going to be a big hit. So first of all, I think this, I'm not saying anything new. So anyone who's teaching and looking at watching this at some point will be like, yeah, sure. So the first time they see CAD tools, they get half excited, half a bit daunted, scared. But it's definitely the excitement of actually we are in a really practical course, and we're doing things with technology. We are working like professionals. So in my opinion, it's a really good idea to introduce technology in the curriculum as early as possible. I know there's a debate, and I know some colleagues would like technologies only to come in at master's level, but to be honest, in my experience, I think it's both motivating and useful if students are treated like the adults they are and trusted to handle technology and not get sidetracked by it. So, so students are excited about working with real tools. They also like the increasingly flexible licensing options that also RWS have introduced in recent years, which allow them to work at home as well. That's brilliant. And the reason I was saying that the move to the cloud is going to be a really big hit is because we've seen very smooth workflows and tasks being completed on time and so on from students working on Windows machines. But then when we move away from Windows, things get a bit tricky. And so, having cloud-based tools are going to help so many people get a feel of the CAD tools, and then maybe working in an environment they're more familiar with than by, I don't know, installing software and saving files.
Yeah, it's more consistent, isn't it, across whatever you're using? So yeah.
And also for the educators, I think is going to be just like for project managers working with freelancers, it's helpful to see who's active and who's where in the process of translating or revising or whatever. So yeah, it's it's what
That
works.
sounds good, yeah. So it helps. One of the things I wanted to ask about is any tips that you'd give other lecturers
Mhm.
from the point of view of using the technology?
Something which, um, well, I'm not gonna answer the question, I guess. I'll start by answering different questions, like what's my wish list, which is also a tip, but it's more of a wish list at the moment, I think, unfortunately, because I think we tend sometimes in academia to really separate technology from other courses and other tasks, and I think that's where we're really getting it wrong. And so, a tip for colleagues would be to not shy away from integrating CAT tools or technology tools, or some tools
Yeah,
into their specialized translation courses, because the students really appreciate from a holistic learning approach. And just like us,
okay.
when things are
Yeah.
split into 5 different places, we get a bit frustrated. The same happens in academia. So the
Mm.
biggest tip would be use your teaching materials, your translation, specialized translation materials, which make sense and have a intrinsic meaning to the students in conjunction with technology, because then we're not going to present technology as an add-on, as something that is optional, especially in today's industry. So then the students would really get as much practice as they can
Right.
with the technology.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think that would be my
Interesting.
biggest tip, because otherwise,
Mm.
um, trust the students, honestly. I mean, we
Mm.
do our best to present a coherent workflow and a task.
Mm.
But then there are things that the students discover about functionalities, or things that actually maybe aren't working so well, and they tell us, and we learn from each other. So yeah, don't
Mm.
be afraid to become the moderator rather than feel the pressure of knowing everything, because we're never going to know everything.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a nice angle. Thank you. So, I understand you're doing some interesting research at the university. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I mean, pretty much ever since we were in Leeds, I say we because Alina is also here, Alina Sekara, and we were together in Leeds, and we're also working together in Vienna. And we always wanted to both use but also present to our colleagues these technologies as something more than just, I don't know, a bit of industry creeping into academia. So we used CAT tools also in our research, and it really blends super nicely. And then you can tell your students actual case studies of how we use something or other. So at the moment, one of our PhD students, Justus Brockman, is using Trados in Trados Studio in his PhD project, and he's looking at the impact of speech synthesis on the productivity and the quality of post-edited texts. And he's working with super fun and amazing collaborators at the OECD in Paris. So his experiment is hands-on, and also involves eye tracking. So he will be looking at the cognitive load as well. And so for that, Studio was the obvious tool of choice, because in our research, we try to use as much of the translator's environment as possible, rather than just put them in artificial settings. So overall, in high trans, we try to optimize if we can, but at least not hurt the translator's way of working. So we look for ways to make them more produce more quality work, or make them more productive, perhaps. Um, and so then we transfer that into our teaching. We use Trados on its own, but also we use Trados with additional plugins, such as Qualitivity, for instance. We used in a project with Alina and Raluca Chereji, and also Miguel Rios, to annotate the quality of machine translated text.
Right.
And so Qualitivity gave us a lot of really useful stats. Justus uses the text-to-speech TTS plugin in his experiment, and we also used it in teaching and in demos. Um, yeah, We post-edit,
Okay.
compare the machine translation versions with plugins for post-editing, for comparison of post-edited versions.
Cool.
A bit of
Well,
everything, to be honest.
yeah, it sounds exciting. It sounds really, really fun as well. So yeah, good luck with all of that.
Well, actually, thank you. I mean, you say good luck, but thank you for the support as well, because RWS has really sped up. And I mean, in the last few years, I could genuinely see a growth in reaching out to universities, and you've been super amazing to us while we were in Leeds, and then we saw you got a few new colleagues, and they are super active as well. And so for technical, for licensing, it's always been extremely easy to reach out, and thank you for your help. So genuinely.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's part of our mission, really, is to support learning and teaching. Cool. Okay, so
Thumbs up.
lastly,
Mission accomplished.
yes, good. I'm glad to hear it. Just on that vein, actually, we have this mission to translate everything in Trados. So it's a bit of a bold one, I guess. What does that mean to you when you think about that, and how do you think it works with, I don't know, as a goal for future translators or translation?
It's a really interesting one. I can think of several angles. So I can think of exciting angles, like more content to handle, maybe more file formats, more integration with content sources, also more integration with new technologies. I mean, everyone's now super excited about large language models and ChatGPT and using those functionalities in some way or another. So that could be quite exciting. I am also aware of certain challenges that the freelancers and the translators face at the moment, because the industry is not equally managed, or I don't know, practices are not similar everywhere. So I could see that could be interpreted as a bit of a more of a pressure to translate everything fast. And I think there we have to ring some alarm bells for the industry, that we keep seeing these reports of the speed of translation being increasing all the time thanks to technology, and it's getting to a pretty interesting time now where we should also acknowledge that it's an expert task, that the translators need time to read and fully understand what they're translating, and then properly write what, or correct or improve or post-edit what they are producing. So I think we need to get a bit of perspective, or help some of our colleagues in the industry get a bit of a perspective. But I mean, it could be also a question of, do we actually need to translate everything? I guess some clients will say, well, not all content is created equal, so some things should be left alone. But I think as a motto, perhaps, or as a, I don't know, tagline, I think it's a useful one, because it can also be used to raise awareness about lesser used languages, about the need for making content available to literally everyone that needs that content, which is not always on the priority list, and we still have languages that are more equal than others, so to
Yeah,
speak.
that's true. Yeah, that's
So
interesting what you say. So yeah, let's do it, but in a quality way, and remember that it's still an art as well as a skill. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
good
and
points. Yeah.
trust the translators as well, because they, sometimes they get a bit of flack for being maybe not so enthusiastic about the latest technological developments, but sometimes the reality is that the technology specialists don't actually listen to them and don't really understand what translators do. So it's easy to dismiss something that you don't understand. So I think translators should be also given a voice as well. But having more types of content handled with fewer headaches and fewer hoops to jump in one tool that can take in videos or software or game files or anything else, or if anyone manages to solve the PDF issue in 2023, I think they'll get the Nobel Prize from everyone. But yeah, it's a nice all-encompassing ideal, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, we all need to listen to each other. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Sort of
nicely rounded up.
slow down a little bit and listen to each other. And yeah, thank you for keeping the channels open, and also thank you for growing the community as well. The RWS campus is growing, and yeah, it's nice to see colleagues and learn from colleagues, and also from the RWS team as well. It's good.
Cool. Well, the more that we can all contribute, the more that we can all benefit from it. So yeah. Great. Okay, thanks, Dragoș. Thanks so much for spending the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.